All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these boards and we're going to glue them up and make a sandwich out of them. So we're going to take this, put that right there. We're going to take this right there so that you get a nice hardwood sandwich. So to do that, we're just going to use some Gorilla Wood glue, Elmer's wood glue, whatever you got, and make sure it covers the entire surface, and glue it up and clamp it overnight. So with the magic of television, we've done that. Let's get the glue out of the way. Now it's time for unclamping. There you go. So now you have a nice sandwich. Next thing we're going to do is bring it over to the bench and start measuring it out. Okay, next what I did was to draw this circle. I have a template you can download off of DIYFidgetSpinners.com. I just aligned the circle right in there, took my pencil, drew around the outside. Now I'm going to take my template and I'm going to glue it down to the piece of wood, making sure that we leave a little bit of an edge. And cut this down. Doesn't have to be perfect, it's just going to get drilled out anyway. And we're going to take this. And this is just Play School Jumbo Stick Glue Paint. You can also use spray glue, whatever you want. And you're going to get it as close to the edge as possible. There you go. Now we're going to wait for a few minutes, let that dry so it doesn't rip off while we're drilling. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to use a 4-inch hole cutting bit to cut this out. This is the arbor. Arbor gets attached to here. Now what we want to do is raise this up a little bit so we can align that bit. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to drill out this center hole right there using a Forstner bit. You notice I didn't go all the way through. I don't want it to tear out, so I'm just going to leave the last little bit for the other side. There you go. Now we got no tear out. And we can use that as a button later on. Alright, let me set up. So if you notice, the bit that I used was a 21 inch or 21 millimeter bit, but the diameter here is actually 22. And that's okay, because we want to make a perfect fit and we don't want to have to use glue. So this will not fit in this hole right there. Let's get that side. Won't fit in the hole. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some sandpaper, core out that hole a little bit, and then we should be good to go. Alright, so what I've done is I've taped with a sandpaper to a drill. Got a piece of wood dowel under here that I got into a cone, and we're just going to start cleaning that out. Okay, so I should be able to pound that in the rest of the way. Yep. Let's move back over to the bench and drill the rest of the holes. Alright, for this next part, what I did was I created a jig so we can hold this ball bearing and this in place so that when we drill the holes, they'll be equidistant from this center hole right here. If they're not equidistant, then what happens is the spinner will wobble when you spin it. So we're trying to minimize that as much as possible. On a 1/2-inch bit, we're going to be using these 1/2-inch ball bearings there. So I've already measured these to make sure that it fits. What I did was I just have a pattern here, template that I use. So this is a 1/2-inch and that's a 1/2-inch hole right there, and I'll be able to tap those right in. And this is a 1/2-inch bit. So you want about a 2 millimeter or so gap right here at least. Give it a little bit of bite for it to grab onto. And this is a 30, 60, 90 template, so each one of these is at 30, that's at 60, that's at 90. And so this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle, if you will. So that looks about right. Let's spin this round to the next one. Notice it's always going to be equidistant because all I'm doing is spinning this dot here. This jig keeps that center bearing really tight and really in a good position, so I don't have to mess around with clamps. There you go. Perfectly drilled. No tear out on the back side because we used a little backer plate there. So now what we got to do is sand up some of these edges, sand up here, get this nice bright side out, and we should be good to go. So let me get that set up. Alright, now we're going to start sanding this thing. The dust mask. Anytime I'm sanding, especially hardwood, exotic woods, I like to use a dust mask just to make sure that I'm not breathing in any toxic chemicals. And I get to sound like Darth Vader. That cleaned up real nicely right there. The pretty wood. This is Padauk or Padauk. I like the black. We'll keep going. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to round over this edge right here. And if I had a router bit that I would trust, I would do it on a router, but my router's not working right now, so I'm just going to do it like this. All right, so as you can see, the router drill press did an okay job. Still need to clean up some of the edges here, but saved me a lot of work on the sander. Plus, it's given me much bigger pieces chipping off rather than a whole bunch of dust flying all over the place. So I'll be able to clean this up in a few minutes, and we'll be back. All right, I think that looks good. Now we're going to move on to the hand sander. All right, now we got the orbital sander, and this is going to just take a few minutes probably. All right, now we're going to go on to just hand sanding with 120 and 220 grit. Wow, just rinsing it off turned out beautiful. Look at that. Look at the color of that wood. That's just wet. I haven't even applied any stain or lacquer to it. It's just natural beauty of the wood just came out just by wetting it down. So what I typically do is I wet it and then do a final with another piece of 220. And what wetting it does is it gets all those real fine fibers up from the wood and makes it really smooth. You don't want to take off too much wood. The wood is sanded. We just want to get off those top fibers. You can see. And this will make it really smooth, as I said. So what happens is the water absorbs it. It gets absorbed into those tiny fibers and raises it up off the surface of the wood, and then you can just sand that bit off. So when this dries, it'll be really smooth. Sometimes if I was using a different kind of wood, I might go down to like a 300 or 400 grit sandpaper, but this is pretty soft right now. I don't think I need to go down any further. All right, let's do a dry fit on all the pieces, and we'll see if we can't get this thing spinning here. It's going to spin well, though. All right, so luckily I put this, when I sanded this inner core, all I have to do is pop that in, and it'll stay there. I don't need any glue, which is nice. And we're going to use our 1/2 inches here. Those look a little bit too big for the holes, so we're probably going to have to sand those down. Yep, let's take a sander to this. I'll be back. All right, so again, I just wrapped a piece of sandpaper around this dowel right here, and we're going to burn that out a little bit. It's just about there. Yeah, I went too far. See that? Now I got to glue it. So, pays to take your time. See, I changed my battery, went too fast. All right, I think I got it now. All right, let me fix that. All right, perfect. So it looks like I'm going to need to glue this one. It's just falling through. This one's got a perfect fit. It's tight. And the next one's got a... That one's got a good fit, and that one's got a good fit. If anything, this one's just a little bit tight. Much better. All right, let's do the final put together now. Using a Dark Wolf ABEC 11 ceramic hybrid bearing on this. Seems to spin pretty good. Haven't cleaned out the oil or anything like that yet. I'll do that after we get this thing all assembled, I'll pop it back out. Looks like I don't need to use my mallet on a little bit on this one. So I'm just looking down the face here to see if I can't. And what I like to do is I get a socket wrench, put it over the hole right there, just give it a little tap. It looks about good. Alright, for this last one we're going to have to glue this. So for that, I like to use Loctite super glue. Seems to work really well. It's not very messy. It's not like an epoxy. And I'm just going to put 3 little dabs in here. And I'm going to let that set up, and then I'll do the other side. Kind of wish I didn't have to mess it up with that glue, but sometimes you get a little overzealous and you rip out a little bit too much wood on the sander there. I'm going to let that set up and I'll be back. Alright, for a finish, I'm going to use just some boiled linseed oil on this, and I might give it a coat of lacquer if I really like it. Just keep up the shine and everything, but you can see that really pops out the wood right there. Look at that difference. Just do one side there. Look at that difference. This will keep the wood nice and conditioned and everything. There's all in those nooks and crannies. Sometimes if it's a complicated piece and I got a lot of like intricate cuts from a jigsaw or something, I will actually dip the whole piece in linseed. Just get a little bucket and stuff. This is working well. Look at that. That's a beautiful piece of wood there. Now what I'm going to do is lots of different ways to clean out these bearings from the grease. I like to just use a little bit of hot water and some liquid soap, and that takes it out pretty good. So let me go do that, and we'll give it a good spin with the it's running pretty good now. Let me go clean this bearing out and we'll be good. All right, so we have a hybrid ceramic bearing here, and you can see right here, these are the bearings, or the balls in there. Those are actually the ceramic. This is a metal, so that's why it's a hybrid. And then on the back, you've got this little retainer clip here that holds all the balls in place, and that's the nylon. Haven't had a whole lot of luck. They come in nylon or rubber, and I haven't had a whole lot of luck with the rubber ones. They just seem to slow everything down. But the these spin pretty good. Haven't found a ball bearing yet that I've really enjoyed. I might switch to an all ceramic bearing. We'll see. Let's test this out and see how it spins. Might need to glue this one in there. That linseed oil made it a little slippery. There you go. Yep, we're going to have to glue that bearing in. But it spins pretty good. Alright, after a little bit of glue, or a little bit, yeah, a little bit of glue, hold it in there. Got a nice good spin going. So we got the hamburger. Looks like a hamburger. I'll just call this one a hamburger. So it's got the nice wood in there in between. Ceramic hybrid bearings, and then 4 metal ball bearings as the weights there. It's a little bit thicker than I like to make them. This is 1/4 inch board, 1/8 board, and 1/4 inch board, but I've got big hands, so it doesn't really bother me too much. And it's got a pretty good balance considering it's handmade and everything.